Have you ever sent a text message that you immediately wished you could take back? Have you ever exploded at someone only to realize 10 minutes later that your reaction was completely disproportionate to the situation? Or maybe, when faced with stress, you don't explode, you freeze. You become paralyzed, unable to think clearly, caught in the headlights of your own anxiety. What do these moments feel like? They feel out of control. They feel as if an outside force has grabbed the steering wheel and is dictating your behavior. Afterward, the guilt sets in. We beat ourselves up. Why can't I just stay calm? We resolve to do better next time. We vow to use our willpower and not let our emotions get the best of us. But here's the hard truth about human psychology. When you are in the peak of a strong emotional response, willpower is useless. Trying to reason yourself out of a panic attack is like trying to stop a speeding train with your bare hands. Most advice on managing emotions focuses on changing your thoughts. But what if the problem isn't just in your thoughts? What if your ability to remain calm isn't a test of mental fortitude, but a physical skill? And what if the secret to emotional control isn't in your mind, but in your lungs? In this video, we're going to dismantle the myths about self-regulation. We'll explore why traditional methods often fail and provide you with a neuroscience-based blueprint for managing your emotions effectively. You'll learn how to hack your own physiology to regain calm, clarity, and composure. Welcome to Psych Blueprint. Let's start building.
To understand how to manage emotions, we first have to understand what we are actually trying to manage. The old paradigm of emotional management is based on the idea that emotions are the enemy. They are chaotic interruptions to our rational existence. In this view, the goal is suppression. Keep a stiff upper lip. Ignore the fear. If you feel something too strongly, you need to muscle it down through sheer mental effort. The problem with this paradigm is that it doesn't work. Emotional suppression doesn't make emotions go away. It just reroutes them. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can keep it there for a while, but it takes a tremendous amount of energy, and eventually it's going to shoot up to the surface unpredictably. Suppressed anger turns into simmering resentment or sudden explosions. The new paradigm, based on decades of neuroscience research, is radically different. It starts with a fundamental truth. Emotions are not the enemy. Emotions are data. They are complex signals from your brain and body designed to alert you to what's happening and motivate you to take action. Self-regulation, therefore, is not about eliminating emotions. It's about being able to experience a wide range of emotions without being overwhelmed by them. It's the ability to feel the emotion, interpret its message, and then choose how to respond in a way that aligns with your values rather than just reacting impulsively. To visualize this, imagine your mind and body as a house with a very sensitive thermostat. We'll call this your emotional thermostat. You function best when your thermostat is set within a specific range. Psychologists call this your window of tolerance. When you are within this window, you are calm, alert, and engaged. Both the emotional and the rational parts of your brain are online and working together. However, if the temperature rises too high, you blast out of that window. You enter a state of hyperarousal. This is the fight or flight response. You feel anxious, angry, chaotic, or panicked. Conversely, if the temperature drops too low, you also fall out of the window. You enter a state of hypoarousal. This is the freeze response. You feel numb, disconnected, or completely exhausted. Self-regulation is the skill of recognizing when you are drifting out of your window of tolerance and knowing how to adjust your thermostat to bring you back to center. But here's the crucial point, and it leads to the critical mistake almost everyone makes when trying to calm down. When you are outside your window, the thermostat is broken. You can't just tell it to turn back on. You have to manually repair it. And to do that, we need to understand the mechanism behind the breakdown.
Self-regulation is a core executive function of the brain. It's not something you are born with. It's a skill that develops over time and can be strengthened through practice. The command center for self-regulation is the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. This is the most evolved part of the brain, located right behind your forehead. Think of the PFC as the wise CEO of your brain. However, the PFC is constantly in dialogue with the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. More specifically, it interacts with the amygdala. The amygdala is the brain's smoke detector. It's incredibly fast and designed to detect threats. In a well-regulated brain, this process works smoothly. The amygdala detects a potential threat, it sends a signal to the PFC evaluates a situation and decides if there is actual danger. If it's a false alarm, the PFC sends a calming signal back to the amygdala, turning off the alarm. For example, you are walking in the woods and see a long, thin object on the path. Your amygdala screams, "Snake," immediately, but a fraction of a second later, your PFC kicks in and says, "Wait, that's just a stick." You calm down. That's self-regulation in action. The problem arises when the signal from the amygdala is too strong or too sudden, or when your PFC is compromised due to stress or fatigue. When this happens, the amygdala takes over.
This phenomenon is known as the amygdala hijack. When the amygdala takes over, it effectively shuts down the PFC. The wise CEO has been locked out of the office. This means your ability to think logically and regulate your behavior is severely impaired. You are operating from your primal survival brain. Simultaneously, the amygdala triggers a cascade of physiological changes in your body. It orders the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Your body is preparing to fight or flee. This is an excellent survival mechanism if you are facing a tiger. It's much less helpful when the threat is a passive-aggressive email from your coworker. This is where the critical mistake happens. When we feel anxious or angry, our instinct is to try to change our thoughts. We try to use our PFC to reason our way out of the emotion. Calm down, it's not a big deal. This is called top-down regulation. It's using the mind to change the body. But remember, when you are in an amygdala hijack, your PFC is offline. Trying to use top-down regulation in this moment is like trying to install a software update on a computer that's turned off. It won't work. The secret to regaining control is to switch to bottom-up regulation. Bottom-up regulation uses the body to change the mind. Instead of trying to force your PFC back online through thought, you focus on changing your physiological state. By calming the body, you send signals of safety back to the brain, allowing the amygdala to stand down and the PFC to come back online.
Now, you might be thinking, this sounds great in theory, but my emotions are just too strong. This is a critical misunderstanding that needs to be cleared up. We are not trying to control the initial emotion. If someone cuts you off in traffic, you are going to feel anger. That's a natural response. The goal is not to stop that feeling from happening. The goal is to regulate what happens next. It's to stop the initial anger from escalating into road rage. Self-regulation is about widening the gap between stimulus and response. As the psychologist Viktor Frankl famously said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Another common skepticism is this any different from mindfulness? Mindfulness and meditation are powerful tools for strengthening self-regulation in the long term. They help to beef up the PFC and quiet the reactivity of the amygdala over time. However, what we are discussing here are immediate intervention strategies. When you are in the middle of an amygdala hijack, you don't have time to sit and meditate for 20 minutes. You need something that works quickly to bring you back into your window of tolerance. That's where bottom-up techniques come in. Finally, it's important to acknowledge that past trauma or chronic stress can make the amygdala more reactive. If you find that you are consistently overwhelmed by your emotions, it is crucial to seek professional help. These techniques are supplementary, not a replacement for therapy.
The consequences of poor emotional regulation are not just about feeling bad. They have profound impacts on every aspect of our lives. Consider Alex, the manager we mentioned. Alex is intelligent and ambitious, but he has a short fuse. When stress is high, even the smallest setbacks can trigger an amygdala hijack. During a tense team meeting, one of his employees presented incorrect data. Alex felt his internal temperature skyrocket. Before his PFC could intervene, he erupted. He criticized the employee harshly in front of the entire team. The fallout was immediate. Trust was eroded. The rest of the team became anxious and less likely to take risks, and Alex, once again, felt ashamed and disappointed in himself. This pattern was costing him. He had been passed over for a promotion, and his personal relationships were strained. Alex's story illustrates the high cost of poor emotional regulation. It damages relationships and derails careers. Conversely, developing strong self-regulation is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. It allows you to navigate conflict constructively and make better decisions under pressure. It's the difference between being ruled by your emotional weather and learning how to steer your own ship through the storm. Now, we're going to see how Alex faced his biggest trigger at work and the simple technique he used to stop the explosion.
Mastering your emotional thermostat involves 3 key phases. Phase 1 is awareness. Phase 2 is immediate intervention. And Phase 3 is reframing and re-engagement. The first step to adjusting your thermostat is knowing when it needs adjusting. This requires developing interoceptive awareness, which is the ability to perceive the internal signals of your body. Your body is constantly sending you signals about your emotional state long before you reach the boiling point. Your exercise is to start practicing a temperature check. Several times a day, pause and pay attention to the physical sensations in your body. What is your heart rate like? What is your breathing like? Are your muscles tense? As you practice this, you will start to notice patterns. You will identify your personal early warning signs. For Alex, his early warning sign was a tightness in his chest and a tendency to clench his jaw. When he noticed these sensations, he knew he was entering the danger zone. Recognizing these signals early is crucial. It's much easier to adjust your thermostat when it's only a few degrees off than when it's already in the red zone.
Once you recognize that you are becoming dysregulated, the next step is to intervene. Remember, we are using the body to calm the mind. One of the most powerful tools is your breath. However, when most people are told to take a deep breath, they actually do it wrong in a way that can increase anxiety. They take a sharp, aggressive inhale, which adds to the activation in the body. The key is to emphasize the exhale. When you exhale long and slow, you activate the vagus nerve, which is your body's emergency brake. But there is a specific breathing technique studied by neuroscientists at Stanford University that works faster than any other for reducing acute stress. It's called the physiological sigh. Here's how you do it. You take a deep inhale through the nose, and then before you reach the top, you take a second short inhale to fill your lungs completely. Then you exhale long and slow through the mouth. It looks like this. Inhale, inhale more, then long exhale. Why does this work?
When you get stressed, the small air sacs in your lungs, alveoli, collapse. The physiological sigh reinflates them in a single breath, which balances the levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen in your blood much more efficiently than regular deep breathing. It sends an ultra-fast signal to the brain that you are safe. Often, just 1 to 3 physiological sighs are enough to significantly reduce your stress levels and bring your PFC back online. This is the tool Alex started using. When he felt his chest tighten during his upcoming performance review meeting, he discreetly performed 2 physiological sighs. It didn't eliminate his frustration entirely, but it lowered the temperature enough so he could continue the conversation constructively. It was the technique that stopped the explosion.
Once you have used the bottom-up tools to calm your physiology, your PFC will start to come back online. Now you can effectively use top-down strategies. The first step is a technique called name it to tame it. Research has shown that the simple act of labeling your emotion can reduce its intensity. When you name the emotion, you are shifting activity from the amygdala to your PFC. You are moving from experiencing the emotion to observing it. So instead of saying, "I am angry," try saying, "I am feeling anger in my body." After you have named the emotion, the next step is to reframe the situation. This means looking at the situation from a more objective perspective. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What response would best align with my values? Let's go back to Alex. During the performance review, when receiving critical feedback, his new response looks like this. He notices his chest tightening, awareness. He performs 2 physiological sighs, intervention. As he feels calmer, he says to himself, "I am feeling anxiety about this feedback." Name it to tame it. Then he reframes. My boss's goal is to help me improve, not to attack me. Reframing. Finally, he re-engages constructively. He says, "Thank you for the feedback. I'd like to understand more about the specific areas where I can improve." That is self-regulation in action. Same stimulus, a completely different response. By practicing these 3 phases, you are effectively rewiring your emotional regulation system. You are strengthening the neural pathways connecting your PFC and your amygdala. Emotions are an essential part of the human experience. But when we lack the skills to regulate them, they can become a source of immense suffering. The journey from being ruled by your emotions to managing them effectively is not about becoming an emotionless robot. It's about gaining the freedom to choose, the freedom to feel deeply without being swept away, the freedom to act in alignment with who you want to be. Today, we've discovered that self-regulation is not just a mental game, it's a physiological process. We've learned that when we are in an amygdala hijack, we must start with the body, using bottom-up tools like the physiological sigh to bring our prefrontal cortex back online. The blueprint is in your hands, but like any blueprint, it's only valuable if you use it to build something. So here is my challenge to you. This week, I want you to focus on phase 1. Awareness. Start practicing the temperature check. Learn to recognize your personal early warning signs. And the next time you feel yourself getting triggered, don't try to think your way out of it. Try a physiological sigh. Inhale, inhale more, and long exhale. See what happens. This is a skill that takes practice. There will be times when you fail. But every time you attempt to self-regulate, you are strengthening those neural pathways. You are building a more resilient brain. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to Psych Blueprint for more science-based blueprints for mastering your mind and your life. Thank you for watching,
And remember, you have the power to adjust your thermostat. It's time to take control.